Bailey bought it, and then of course Barnum joined him later. Became Barnum and Bailey's greatest show. Took Dan Rice's off because see what happened. Dan Rice was Hercules and down in Manhattan for his thing, and he had fallen out with Barnum, so he outsmarted him. So he was still mad. Dan had a museum down south, and he also had probably one of the biggest circus tents ever. It was a great hippodrome and menagerie. He had they called it the pavilion back then. And then later on, the people would leave, so they would have to he got the tinsmiths to make torchlight lamps so that the people could stay longer, so they could see the acts. And then, of course, people get hungry and leave. So then he was walking down the street one day, and he saw this little Negro boy roasting peanuts. And he said, "Can I have a cup for that for a penny?" And he said, "Yes." So he ate them. He said, "This is great because they feed peanuts to their animals raw. You couldn't eat them; they're nasty." And popcorn. That was amazing food, so they put them in sacks and handed them to the people so they could stay. And you wanted a good seat, you had to pay 50 cents, with a cushion at the circus. And he also had his own river boats. And one he won at a poker game. Notable friends, Stephen Foster, Maurice Foster. I don't know if you ever heard of Stephen Foster, the singer. Well, Dan Rice was probably one of his most influential people for him. And the songs, memorizing and circus animals. I had Lala Rook. She was a tightrope walking elephant. We had the only known rhinoceros trained. He had many faces. He was actually the most famous clown in the world at the time. Here we got Bailey. This is his business cards, his carriages, his later life. This is the monument he dedicated $5,000. He paid for a monument to be dedicated to the fallen heroes of this during the Civil War and up in Girard, Pennsylvania. At the mountain, it's probably the second one in the United States known standing. Still today. We just did the 150th last year. Celebrate, here it is when it's all wrapped up with events. And all right, this is later on when he was running as president of the United States. This is his costume.
And what year was
1868. He was running for the Democratic Party, but his counter beat him out by about 4 votes. And then, of course, he lost to Ulysses S. Grant. He was by a landslide. But that's Dan later on in 1868. That's probably the only known. That's a rare photo of him. See, for Paul, another circus owners he worked with. Here he is later on before he died. He's out in New Jersey. This is Maria Ward Smith. Brown, excuse me. Maria Ward Brown. She wrote his biography and memoirs. That's why he's only lived. This is a couple of houses he lived in before they were torn down. His obituary. Here's some other pictures of Dan. This is a younger Dan. That kind of look like him, right? That's Excelsior is one of his horses. That's, of course, the red, white, blue. This is a calendar they do up in Girard, Pennsylvania. Here he is later on in life.
Is that where he's from, Girard?
Well, actually, that's where he moved. He was originally from New York City. Oh, here's Old Putt, his rhinoceros, trained rhinoceros. And he bought it from another circus. And the guy paid like $2,000 for that rhino, and he wound up buying it for $700. The guy wanted $2,000, and he said, "No, I'll pay you $700," because they had killed some people in his groups. And then he became the most popular act after, and they were all mad because now he's making money on it. Yeah, they didn't like him too much. He could sing, he could dance. He did the jigs. He was a clown for many years. That's how he started. After he was a jockey when he was a young boy. He lived in Pittsburgh because his mother died, so he left New York City, went to Pittsburgh, walked the racehorse there, and got a job. That's where he met Foster's and Barclays. The Barclay Banks you see nowadays, that's original of them. There's William Wallace. This is Queen Victoria's jester, what you would call. And this is him, I'll show him in costume. This is William Wallace in costume. See, when the cirque back then, it was of course French, clowns weren't like what you see today with red noses and all that. They were actually Shakespearean style. It's the Bowery he worked in. Here's Dan Rice in his costume. That's one of his circus costumes. That's a clown. And then here's Harcourt, and the other one he does. That's another clown. So now when people look, when you try to explain to them a clown, they think makeup and frizzy hair. That's not what it is. So then he did this because his grandfather was really good friends with Israel Putnam, and he was a matros during the Revolutionary War. His name was Jonathan Crum, and under Washington's army at Valley Forge. That's where he camped, his grandfather. So his idol was Israel Putnam too, basically, besides his grandfather. That's why he named the rhinoceros Old Put. After that, he had a camel that he got from the United States Camel Corps. Ever hear about that? Yeah, Jefferson Davis was Secretary of War at that time, so they decided to see, well, in the deserts in New Mexico and Arizona and all that, see, maybe we get camels so they can run the U.S. Army through the deserts. So eventually that fizzled out, and they let them loose. A lot of them were let loose or escaped. So people were rounding them up, and they were selling them. So he'd bought one, but the hooves were overgrown so much that it kept stumbling as it walked. So he named it the Waltzing Camel, and he made it Van Orden over his clumsy account he had, because he always stumbled. So he named him after that. So he named his animals after people he knew in life or friends. He had comical mules. He named them Pete and Barney after two young fellows that saved his life from drowning. And the Sullivans were another group that he had. He had racing greyhounds with monkeys on their back. He had a hyena. He had Leonidas the lion. Excelsior 1, Excelsior 2. 10 men would carry him out on a platform. 10 strong men that would carry him out, and that's how everything. And he always had like one ring. So you wanted the whole popular circus to be able to focus on that one ring. And most other circuses had more than one ring, 3-ring circuses. And he thought that you don't want to go see Dan Rice. You know, he's a one-horse show, basically, because that's all he had was one horse. So if you ever heard the expression one-horse show, Dan Rice. Now, during the campaign of another good friend, Zachary Taylor, Dan Rice had a bandwagon. So when he's promoting Zachary Taylor to become president, he said, here, jump up on the bandwagon and we'll promote you as you were going through town. So jump on the bandwagon, that's another expression from Dan Rice. And he also got Zachary Taylor elected president too, by a landslide. And then in turn, he got down in Washington City, gave him, this is one of the circus posters. Let's see. We got, yeah, every time somebody comes over, gives me, this is like his axe. Have you ever see like his axe here? He got educated animals. It's just the way they popularized everything back then, because you know they didn't have the media that we have today. This is the only one you can get, and maybe you're lucky you got this once a month, and hopefully you caught the shows. So are you a teacher yourself? Yeah. So you go back and teach your students this, or are you just doing